Dave, that's 5 league wins on the bounce now. For you, what's been the biggest factor in this turnaround in form?
Lots goes on in football matches, and I suppose ultimately, to simplify it, they decided in both penalty areas, and I suppose at one end we've minimised the mistakes we've made, not been punished for them, and at the other end we've taken the chances that we've created, which when you look back on the first 4, 5, 6 games of the season in terms of league and cup, that was I suppose the bit that let us down. Large parts of the bits that went on in the middle were good. We just weren't being clinical at one end, and we were conceding poor goals at the other end, and that's certainly tightened up. And I don't think it's certainly not a huge surprise to us within these 4 walls that means results turn around.
When it comes to keeping the momentum going, have you allowed yourself to look at the league table at all, or does the motivation come from elsewhere, especially at this stage of the season?
The league table means nothing at the moment, and people will maybe think I'm not sort of telling the truth when I say that. I suppose from a player's perspective, absolutely. We, as a staff, we want reinforcements for them that we're doing things the right way by getting results. If them results then culminate in the fact that we're sat at the top of the table, then brilliant, because like I say, you get further reinforcement and confidence from that. But the reality of it is, it makes no difference where you sit currently. Yes, we'd all love to be in a scenario where we sit in the top 3 positions from the first game of the season to the last game of the season, and ultimately you get automatic promotion. The reality of that happening is probably very, very slim. And yes, we want to be up the top for the duration, if you like, but again, we would absolutely now take being in those top 3 places in April. And if that meant that we didn't touch them from October until March, that would be a good compromise in terms of where it sits. But obviously, if we are winning games, then we would expect to be at the topper end, which is where everyone wants to be.
I imagine that as a manager, the thinking is very much, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But we highlighted at the start of the campaign that we were missing the likes of Carl Wotton, to name just one. With his return getting ever closer, at what stage do you start to think about what may need to potentially change setup-wise in order to reintegrate him back into the squad?
Well, nothing needs to change in terms of how that looks. We want to be in a position that we have every player available for us and every option available for us, and that, again, in terms of shapes, it's not massively important. It never really has been. We set up in a certain way in possession and a certain way out of possession, and if we're going to press, which inevitably we do, we have to press in a certain shape against certain teams and certain shapes against other teams. That's largely dependent on what they do, not what we do. And the same in possession. We want to try and get people, we want to try and create overloads in certain areas of the pitch. What we would have with a Woods being added to the mix is, probably for the past couple of years, we've been a team that crosses the ball an awful lot, and with him not being in the team, we still cross the ball. We scored from across on Saturday, but we've had to adapt that a little bit. In terms of, like I say, in terms of what shape looks like, is it when does a 3 at the back change to a 4 at the back? On Tuesday with Ethan Pye as a left back, and Odin in front of him, is that a back 3? Is it a 4 at the back? It doesn't make much difference. Like I say, we want to get players on the pitch in certain areas, overload in terms of numbers where we think we can hurt teams, and then ultimately create chances as a result of that. First off, on Tuesday, we carried on what we've done in previous weeks, and we did that really, really well, and got ourselves into a winning position, and probably should have been out of sight, and if not then in the first 5-10 minutes of the second half, where we created really good opportunities. And we have to continue that. You have to be adaptable based around what you come up against, because every team's different. Every team will look at what we've done over not just the last 5 games, over the first 11 games of the season, and try and look at areas they think they can hurt us, but ultimately look at areas where we've been pretty potent and how they're going to try and stop that.
They say you should never fall in love with a lone player, but I think for many it's far too late for that when it comes to Louis Barry. What have you made with his impact, and just tell us about being entrusted with talent like that?
Regarding not getting too attached, shall we say, to lone players, why not? Ultimately, any player that's here is here to help us, and I'd much prefer it that way, that you have something that does really, really well for you, and at some point that changes, than have something that does nothing for you. You don't get attached to it, and then it goes back. So I'd much rather be in a position where we are with having Louis in the building. He's done in and come in and I suppose from my perspective done what we'd hoped that he would. Some loans work in different ways. We ultimately brought Louis in as a ball carrier and as a dribbler, and seeing his potential in that. If you look at data from last year in League Two, even though at the back end he didn't play an awful lot, he was the highest number of dribbles per 90 minutes over the course of the season. We didn't have that within our squad and wanted to add that. The challenge with Louis was always going to be adding consistent numbers to that. So he's had spells where we look back on his footage from the time when he was at Swindon, and he scored goals. What he hasn't done is either had a consistent run where he's been in the team for a long period and alongside that scored goals. Well, he's done that in the first 11 games or whatever it is, taking cup games out of it. He's had goal involvements, which for a forward player is going to be massive. There's still plenty for him to work on and him to improve on. At the moment, he's in a rich vein of form where he looks a real threat, and he does things in terms of his balance. There's a couple of, like I say, the situations on Tuesday night where he tiptoes down the touchline and then across the byline. You're wondering how he doesn't fall over, how he can stay on his feet, but he does really, really well, and is unfortunate not to add another goal and another assist to what's an already a good record for him. But he'll acknowledge the fact that he's still got plenty to work on, because at the moment he's doing it at League Two level. Now the difference between League Two and the Premier League is enormous. So that consistent performance and working on the bits that he needs to improve on, and there's plenty of bits that he needs to improve on, without that sounding negative, will ultimately dictate how high he can go and play. But like I say, at the moment we just keep him in a good place, which he is, and he'll be somebody that's flagged up all over this division in terms of a real threat, if and when they come up against us.
I think you mentioned at the start of the season Doncaster as potential dark horses for promotion. Do you feel that they're in a bit of a false position at the minute right now, given the slow start they've had?
Well, they're not in a false position in terms of results. They're probably in a false position when you look at their squad in terms of what they could potentially achieve. They've had some, like I say, similar to ourselves, they've had some injuries, they've had some disappointing results, but on the flip side of that, they've picked up some good results as well. So it's just about finding that consistency. We know what their threats are, but I'm sure they know what our threats are as well. So I'm sure tomorrow will be a really good atmosphere. They've obviously sold out their allocation. Certainly from our perspective, Edgeley will be bouncing, and we hope to put in another performance that keeps the run going that we're currently on.
When you're on a run like this, is who you play almost irrelevant? Is it more just about focusing on ourselves and that consistency?
Who you play is always relevant, because you need to, at times, tweak what you're doing in terms of knowing and giving the information to the players around what we're going to do. Because if we don't know what our pressing structures against Doncaster are, and they are different than what they were against Forest Green, then we won't get a kick of the ball. So it's always relevant, because there's different opposition with different threats, and alongside that, different weaknesses. So we'll always focus on us and our strengths in terms of what we do, but it needs to be tweaked and give the players, I suppose, pictures as to what the game might look like. Because if we can, like I say, give them experience of that in the week leading up to the game on the Saturday, then ultimately when it does happen on the Saturday, they are half prepared for it or know what's going to happen. So there will be, like I say, a big focus on us. We know that we need to be right at it, and if we're right at it, we've shown over not just the last 5 games or so, but we've shown over the course of the season that we're good enough to be a strong side in this league, and hopefully that'll continue at the weekend.
Without giving too much away, are there any significant updates ahead of tomorrow's game?
No, not significant updates really. I say we go into I suppose the end of a really busy week for us with the Tuesday fixture. Thankfully with no players out, and knowing that although we have an AFL Trophy game on Tuesday, that this is maybe, in terms of the league, we have a week's break, if you like, between Saturday's game and the following Saturday. And I would hope that by this time next week we do have some potential involvement. We may have some involvement on Tuesday, but we need to see what that looks like. But thankfully over the past couple of weeks, certainly, there's been more positive news than negative on the injury front, and that's going to be massively important for us moving forward, because when we do, like I say, we've got 7 or 8 senior pros, 2 of whom will be out for the season. We completely understand, but the others, if we can get them back, our squad looks, like I say, looks ridiculously strong, and gives us them options that, to be fair, maybe at the minute we maybe don't have. When you look back, we do have a young, pretty inexperienced bench, and to have the likes of the ones you've spoken about, we had Miles, Watts, Noyler, Campsey, Nick Powell, have them back, and I've missed people out within that, Burner, whoever else not. To have them back available for us will be huge, and hopefully by start of November, hopefully every single one of them will be back. Hopefully we've not lost any more, then our squad looks a really good one to move forward with.
Good to hear. Thanks, Dave. All the best.
Cheers. Thank you.